If you came to see me dance a jig, you probably came to the wrong place. If you came to check out this little jig I put together to make cutting your heliums down, you're definitely in the right place. Just a couple pieces of 2x4 scrap stuff I had laying around, a piece of plywood. The idea is to be able to put your stick in this jig, and then especially once you've already got one of them cut off, figure out your lengths that you're going to cut them. You can just set your cut stick in here before you drill the holes. Use your cutoff from your stick, and since all of these holes are from the factory, set it on top of your other one, and then just drill your holes straight through here with the size bit that you need for each of the holes. There's tons of videos around. There's cardboard templates. I've seen a bunch of other different things. This worked out really well for me, having everything kind of locked in place so that you're not messing with a piece of cardboard that you can bore out holes incorrectly and things like that. This really helped me a lot, and it only took a few minutes to throw together a bunch of scrap stuff. No cost involved to me. If you've got, you probably tear apart a pallet or something, which is free material, and build something similar to this. One thing to think about is if you're going to use a drill press, making sure that whatever your 2x material isn't, and your board on the bottom isn't so big that you can't get into the drill press to use that. I just hand drilled mine. I've got quite a bit of experience with hand tools, and knowing how to drill straight down through was no issue for me. That being said, figuring out the lengths of your sticks, can be kind of complicated. It seems like I've seen a video, another guy who corrected some people on where they were cutting their sticks down because they were ending up putting the actual fold down step in one of these channels here, which is definitely not okay. You need to make sure that your fold down steps are in these open spaces, and that's really the only thing that I can think of that limits you on lengths of your sticks. Mine, I did another video with a stick top platform. When I originally built that, I had put some aluminum spacers in here. I took out my top steps because they stick up a little bit and it didn't work well with the way I had my platform on there. So I put little aluminum spacers in here, and when I cranked it down, I bent them in a little bit. And it was completely fine, no issues, but I felt like if I was going to cut down my sticks, I would go ahead and just eliminate that spot where I had put a little extra tension on the stick. So for mine, I cut the tops off. The only thing you really need to know for cutting tops off of a stick is that if you measure from the top of your factory stick to the center of this hole, mine were 3/4 of an inch. So in reality, you can go to any of these longer spaces here and find the center of this space, the longer area here, find the center of that, just eyeball it, measure up 3/4 of an inch, and that's where you're going to cut the stick off at. So you could do it here and end up with a, I believe, 24-inch stick. You could do it here and you end up with 20 and a half, and that's what I ended up with. And then or you could just come down here from these holes that are already in the stick, measure up 3/4 of an inch, and that gives you about 16.5-inch stick finished. I haven't measured what the between step is on that. If I think of it, I'll try to measure that and maybe put it up here on the screen for you. But I think the only difference with what I did as compared to what a lot of people do is cutting off the bottom is that I do have to drill a hole for the button. It's not a big deal. It's a 5/16 drill bit. Just drill it all the way through, and it works out just fine. Just something to think about is that for cutting off the top, you're going to find the center and then measure back up, and then that'll make it so that you're putting your fold down step holes right in the center of this big space. Everything else, you can just drill the holes wherever they are. So as long as you follow that guideline, that by cutting off the top, it gives you 3 different options for stick length. If you're going to cut off the bottom, it's a little bit different. Make sure you don't confuse the two as far as the processes go, but with your step here, your fold down step, from the center of this hole to the bottom of this leg is 1 inch. So when this folds down, it needs to have at least 1 inch of material below that hole for this to set on in order to give you strength to step into. So if you're going to cut off the bottom of the stick, similar idea. You'll find the center of this bigger area here, and here, and this one here actually gives you a little more play because there's a lot of space there. And you'll come back down towards the bottom of the stick an inch, and that's where you cut it off at. So if you just want to come to this first big space, make sure your sticks are all the same. I mean, do some measuring, make sure that your sticks are laid out the same as mine. I'm assuming they are, but they're different. There are different batch numbers. So my sticks, by coming to this first hole and then coming down an inch, it leaves me with a 25-inch stick. The second hole, it leaves me with a 21, right at 21 and an eighth is what I ended up with. If I come to the top and then this one, and then you can actually use quite a bit more of this space. I mean, you're going to want to come up in here a little ways so that you stay away from this slot with for your holes for your fold down steps. I mean 3/4 of an inch or so would probably be fine. Measure down an inch, cut it off there. But then you can also, if you wanted to just use this set of holes that's already here, from the center of that, come down an inch, mark it, and you will end up with somewhere between 17.5 and 15.25 for your overall finished stick. Same thing, I don't have the measurements for what your step to step is. It would really just be measuring this distance here and for whatever, and then subtracting wherever your holes are there. So I'm assuming that if you have a 24-inch stick, you're going to end up with 2 inches or maybe a little more than 2 inches less than that will be your step to step. So I'm going to not cut these on film. I'm just going to show you how I would do it. I'm at my dining room table today. It's a little cold outside. Colder than I want to be in the garage today anyway. But I would use a chop saw. That's what I have used personally, but you could use a hacksaw. You could potentially, if you had the right blade, use a miter saw. Use something that's okay for cutting aluminum. Like if you were to use an electric chop saw, make sure it's got a high enough tooth count and everything. If you use something cut for rough cutting plywood or something, it might grab on this and could be a little dangerous. Also, you lose any kind of warranty, if there is a warranty on Hawk sticks, and you're liable once you start doing this. So I can't recommend that you do it. It's what I did. It's worked out fine for me, but definitely don't do this if you don't feel like you're going to be safe. Anyway, so you figured out what length you want. I went with 20.5, like I said. I went out and cut my first stick off, and then you could actually cut all 3 of them off and then just save one of these. I saved mine from my original 3. I'm actually adding a 4th to mine, so then I can just pull this out of the drawer and I can use it to modify this 4th stick. So once you got it cut, slide in here, set your template on here. Remember also that your buttons, your suction cups on these newer sticks, get this separated, they're not in the same plane with each other. So this one sits down here a little bit compared to this one. That's going to be the case on your cutoff here. So pay attention to which side is the top. Maybe even label it. So this hole is a little bit lower than this hole, so that makes the lower hole is the top on my sticks. So just make sure you think about that whenever you're doing any kind of drilling on these. Those 2 holes in particular, you're not going to drill all the way through, and you're actually going to measure down from the top, but it's still going to come into play. You're going to want to make sure that all your top holes match and all your bottom holes match within reason. And they, if you're off just a hair, those are rubber, the suction cup portion of that, so it's not really going to mess with anything. They will play just a little bit. I like to be as precise as possible, but if you are off a hair, it won't hurt anything. Anyway, stop. I had another brilliant idea at 2:30 in the morning. It was, I woke up, dog barked or something, woke up, couldn't go back to sleep, so of course my mind starts running, and I thought of a way to make this even a little bit easier. I can't think of any reason why on your cutoff piece that you've saved, drill your holes for your suction cups. Just go ahead and drill that all the way through with your 9/32 bit, this one and the other one. Then when you set this in the jig on top of your cutoff piece, you can just run that 9/32 all the way through this hole to at least mark the location of your suction cups. On the factory sticks, this hole say this is for your cup, I believe, and then this is for the portion that goes inside of it on the backside. They've actually only drilled through the first 2 layers of the stick. I personally don't see any reason why you couldn't, even on your finished sticks, go ahead and just drill that hole all the way through. So you could, on your cutoff piece, drill both these 9/32 holes all the way through. That way they're on here and you don't have to measure down from the top to figure out your locations. You just copy it right through. If you're going to do it the correct way, you would set your stick in here and do all your holes, including this hole, and just mark it on there like I showed in the beginning of the video. Pull this off, and then on this one, drill it 2 layers down through, and not all the way through the 3rd layer. And then, since you will have already drilled through your little cutoff piece here, this one also, just flip your stick that you're going to be using over and do the same thing. Run this one through, mark it on the back side, and just drill through the top 2 layers. Like I said, I would probably think it would be okay to just drill through all 3 layers with this. Like I said, it's nothing structural. It's in the middle, definitely the most sturdy piece of the stick itself. But back to your regular schedule viewing. So you get back, you set your cut stick in here, put your other piece in here, put it up tight to the top. There are actually 4 different drill bits, technically, that you can use on this. You got a 5/16 for your button on the top, and all you would do is put this in your drill. What I did is I would just run it in here and just make a mark in this stick on the bottom, switch to your next drill bit, which for some reason on these sticks, this hole, which is for your standoff, is slightly smaller than the hole for your fold down step. Personally, I used a 1/4 inch for both of those, for this one and this one. The 1/4 inch is slightly bigger than the 15/64 that actually is probably the drill bit for your standoff. I've done mine. I used it for the last month or so, hunting just about every day of the season, and no issues. But technically, these holes for your fold down steps would be 1/4 inch. The standoff hole would be 15/64. So you just go through here, kind of mark it with your drill bit in the drill. So just kind of mark it on there. If you just start the hole, you'll see. Then you can pull this off of here, and all of your marks will be on your cut stick that's here. So then you can just drill through here. If you're going to do it on a kitchen table or something like that, make sure you're not going to drill through your piece of plywood or whatever your base is and hit your table. That would be terrible for your whole family, I'm sure. But just drill through all of your button, your standoff, and your fold down steps. Those drill all the way through. Now comes the suction cup portion of it. I use a 9/64 bit on this. G2 Outdoors, I believe, does a video on making these, and he uses a drill bit and a tap, and that is technically the correct way to do it. I felt confident in my ability to drill this 9/64 hole in here, and then just slightly wallow it out a little bit, and just be gentle putting that screw in there so that it doesn't snap off. The reason for these is literally just for your stacking ability of the sticks. So if you were, say, to drill this hole in there and not get it exactly right, make it too big or too small and you snap the screw off there, as long as you have all of these matching with each other, so say I drill this in here and break it off, or I make it too big so the screw doesn't grab, I can move this down a 1/2 inch. Nothing structural about it, anything else. It's literally just how you stack these. If I move this one down a 1/2 inch, I have to move the other ones down, though, also, or up, either way you want to look at it. One thing I noticed on mine was, like I said, I cut the tops off mine, I put this template on here, marked it all out, drilled it, and maybe it was just the order of how I had it on there, but I had to move this bottom button up on the 2 of mine that have it. The 3rd one doesn't have it because it's the bottom of the stack. Not a big deal at all, but just something to think about. Okay, now as for why I did this, I had the full-length sticks. I loved them. I mean, I haven't tried other sticks, but I have a hard time thinking that, especially based on the cost of these, I have a hard time thinking that there's much better option They're pretty lightweight. Once you at full weight, they're just over 3 pounds, I believe, and I think that's with the stock strap that came with it. I've got the daisy chains on mine. After I cut mine down to 20.5, they weighed 2.31 pounds. Of course, that's pretty specific to my length. So if you go with different lengths, it's going to be a little different, obviously. A stack of 4, once I have this done, will be 9.24 pounds, which is not bad at all, especially when you think that a stack of 3 taller ones, which can catch on brush more or hit you in the legs or whatever, weighs about that same amount. And that's one reason why I cut mine down. It was not about weight saving. It was as much as it was about just the bulkiness of it. With 3 of these, and I use a nader, and it just hooks on whichever one I put my knee on. I get 15 feet to the top of my 3rd stick, and then I usually set my platform 90 degrees off from there and up another 1.5 feet or so. So I'm actually stepping up onto my platform. I didn't necessarily do it for weight savings, but I think there is an advantage in that. I know that a lot of guys will say shouldn't be trying to cut ounces and cut pounds and things like that, and you should exercise or work out or whatever. Well, I've done that also. My wife and I did a 30-day diet thing last February, and it was terrible. But I lost 25 pounds. I started exercising. I exercised throughout the off season, and then I didn't so much when season started back up, and I've just started again. Actually, I'm going to do my first 5K here in April, and then a 10K the day after that. It'll be first time ever. So training for that is pretty exciting. Like I said, I wasn't necessarily interested in the weight savings overall, but there is an advantage to it. There is a value in it. I mean, if I can go in and do everything I need to safely and save a few pounds, I'm all for that for sure. But once I have these cut and stacked, I got this, I talked about it in my last video, but I didn't show it or anything. $35, I think, something like that, off of Amazon. I'll put a link down below. And it's carried everything I needed. It's actually has more space than I need this year. I'm going to pare down on what all I carry in a pack. I'll carry more in my pockets on my coat and stuff. It did not come ideally set up for what I'm doing. The Predator platform fits inside of it, which I was pretty surprised about. It was a little snug, and even if it didn't quite fit in there, I'd be able to zip it up and have it at the top of the pack up here, and it worked well for everything. My clock's singing to us right now. Okay, modification that I made to it was that it had these clips and straps. There was one here and one here. If I remember right, actually the bottom ones were a kind of a buckle thing that you couldn't unsnap. So you could slide something into the top of it and then cinch it down, and this one unsnapped. Well, I cut those off completely, the bottom ones, and then I took the hardware off of the top ones and actually sewed it here and here, and then it works really well to just put my sticks on here. Clip it in, cinch it down, and that's a pretty great way of carrying it. I think it was $35, $37, somewhere around there. No regrets whatsoever in that pack setup. I believe that's everything that I wanted to cover here. Save your piece if you cut them off, in case you want to add another stick later on. Have fun, be safe. I'm hoping to start making some more videos. I've kind of been in a funk here lately. I got a whole list of ideas that I want to do, but I'm going to try to actually put some effort into making some more videos. I got some really great ideas. I got some DIY stuff. I do some leather work and woodwork and pretty much everything you can imagine. And I like experimenting with all kinds of stuff, so stick around, subscribe, like, all that stuff. See you guys.